He looked at me, like no one ever had before. And then he asked something that made my heart stop. My step-younger brother, my own flesh and blood. I wasn't prepared for what happened next. I don't think anything could have prepared me, to be honest. Because when someone sees a version of you that even you forgot existed, it shakes something deep inside. Something you didn't even know was sleeping. And that's what he did to me. He didn't just look at me, he saw me. And God, I was so starved for that. Let me take you back for a second. Picture this, a house that looks perfect on the outside. Neat, quiet, smiling family photos lining the hallway. But inside, everything felt cold. Like I was walking through a home that used to belong to someone else. My marriage? It was functional, like a machine. Wake up, go to work, come home, cook dinner, pretend to sleep. My husband, Alex, was distant. Not cruel, not at all. Just gone in a way that doesn't make noise. He used to laugh with me. Touch my hand when we passed in the kitchen. Ask me how I was really. But over time, those moments faded into silence. And silence? It's not peaceful when it stretches between two people who used to be in love. It becomes this heavy thing, pressing down on you, until you forget what lightness ever felt like. I don't even know when I stopped looking in the mirror. Maybe it was the third fertility treatment. Maybe it was the day he called work more important than our anniversary dinner. Or maybe it was the morning I realized he hadn't said I love you in months. Not even in passing. So when Ethan moved in, my step-younger brother, it was supposed to be temporary. Just until he figured out college, adjusted to life without our shared parent. He was 17. Almost 18. Still a kid, right? Or so I thought. But there was something different about Ethan. He wasn't loud or demanding. He was quiet, observant. The kind of quiet that makes you feel like maybe someone is finally paying attention. I didn't notice it at first. Not the way his eyes lingered. Not how he'd pause before he said something, like he was weighing his words. But then one night, I was crying in the kitchen. Silently. In the dark. Because my husband had come home, walked right past me, and went to bed. No hug. No, how was your day? Nothing. And Ethan, he walked in, barefoot, sleepy-eyed. And he didn't ask what was wrong. He didn't try to fix it. He just sat next to me, and stayed. That kind of presence? It is something to a person who's felt invisible for far too long. I told myself it was harmless. That he was just being sweet. Kind. Gentle in a way I hadn't felt in years. But then came the request. The one I'll never forget. The one that rewrote everything I thought I knew about who I was. He looked at me, God, I can still see the way his eyes searched mine, and he said, I need to ask you something, but please don't hate me after. And in that moment, every sound disappeared. No clock ticking. No fridge humming. Just my heartbeat, loud and scared and confused. I had no idea what was about to come out of his mouth. But something deep inside me already knew. Whatever it was, nothing would ever be the same again. Before we dive in, if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe to Shocking Infidelity Saga, where we uncover the most emotionally complex true stories. And if you've ever felt torn between love, duty, and desire, this one's for you. Like, comment, and let's talk about it. Because sometimes, the things we're most ashamed to admit are the ones we most need to share. I need to ask you something, but please don't hate me after. That's what he said. And I just stood there. Frozen. Every part of me suddenly alert, like my body knew something my mind wasn't ready to admit. But before I tell you what he asked, you need to understand the world I was living in. Because nothing like this ever happens out of nowhere. It builds. Quietly. Slowly. And then one day, everything breaks at once. I was 29. Married. On paper, it looked stable. Normal, even. But behind closed doors, it was something else entirely. Alex, my husband, was always gone. Not physically, necessarily. But emotionally? He'd checked out years ago. We met young. Fell hard. Got married before either of us really knew who we were. He used to make me feel like I was the center of his world. Now, I wasn't even in his peripheral vision. He buried himself in work. Always another meeting, another deadline. And when he came home, he was a ghost. No kiss. No questions. Just quiet dinners and separate corners of the same house. We'd been trying to have a baby. At first, it felt hopeful. We were a team. We had a plan. But after the second failed round of IVF, everything shifted. He got colder. I got quieter. It was like we were grieving the same loss but in different languages. The hormones, the waiting, the tests. They broke something in me. And Alex? Instead of holding me through it, he pulled away. I stopped showing him my pain because it felt like screaming into a void. So, I started talking less. Laughing less. I started wondering what I'd done to become so easy to ignore. And then Ethan moved in. He was 17, almost 18. Just starting college. After his father, our shared parent, died suddenly, we offered him a place to stay. I didn't know him well before that. We didn't grow up together. He was polite, quiet, respectful. But there was something else about him, something I couldn't quite put into words. The way he observed everything, like he was taking notes the rest of the world didn't bother with. Like he saw things no one else could see. Including me. At first, it was small things. He'd ask if I needed help with groceries. He'd notice when I was tired or when I hadn't eaten. Things Alex hadn't asked in years. One evening, I was folding laundry on the couch. He walked by, paused, and said, "You always look peaceful when you're doing things like that." It was such an odd thing to say, but so sincere. And it made me realize I couldn't remember the last time someone told me they noticed anything about me. He never crossed a line. Not then. Not outwardly. But his eyes. They lingered. They weren't the eyes of a boy who saw me as a sister. They were the eyes of someone studying a person they wanted to understand. And I hated how much I noticed. I hated that I started waiting to hear his footsteps when he came home. That I smiled a little too easily at his compliments. That I found myself thinking about him in the quiet spaces of my day. The house we lived in was clean, but it never felt warm. Everything was in its place. The furniture was nice. The photos were posed. But the air was heavy. Stale. Like it hadn't been breathed in properly in years. Sometimes I'd walk through the hallway and stop at our wedding picture. We looked so young, so sure. Now it just stared back at me like a question I couldn't answer. At night, I'd lie awake next to Alex. He'd be snoring softly, turned away from me. And I'd wonder if this was really it. If this was the life I'd built. A life where love became obligation. Where touches stopped meaning anything. Where silence echoed louder than screams. Ethan was the only one who broke that silence. He'd knock on my door just to ask how my day was. He'd sit with me in the kitchen late at night when I couldn't sleep. He told me about his classes, his fears, his dreams. And slowly, he started asking about mine. Things I hadn't talked about in years started spilling out. Not because I planned to say them, but because someone was finally listening. I told him about the miscarriages. About how it felt to inject myself with hormones and then still fail. How Alex wouldn't talk about it. How I sometimes felt like I was disappearing one layer at a time. He listened. Really listened. And when I cried, he didn't flinch. I should have pulled away. I should have put space between us. But I didn't. Because even though he was younger, even though he was technically family, he made me feel something I hadn't felt in so long alive. I remember one night specifically. We were both in the living room. The TV was on, but neither of us was watching it. He turned to me and said, "You don't have to pretend when you're with me." I didn't even realize I'd been pretending. That was the night everything inside me shifted. That was the night I knew this wasn't just grief or loneliness or confusion. It was desire. And it terrified me. Because what kind of woman lets her heart drift toward someone so forbidden? What kind of woman finds comfort in the arms of someone she's supposed to protect? I told myself I was being dramatic. That it was just the attention. That once I felt seen again, it would fade. But it didn't fade. It grew. Quietly. Slowly. Until it filled every room. Every thought. Every breath. So when he looked at me that night and said he had something to ask, and begged me not to hate him afterward, I already knew. I already knew what was coming. I just didn't know if I was strong enough to stop it. It was a rainy afternoon. The kind where the sky turns this deep, moody gray and everything outside looks like it's been dipped in slow motion. Thunder rolled low in the distance, like it was clearing its throat. The power went out sometime after lunch, just a blink, then darkness. No lights, no hum of the fridge, no background noise to distract me from the silence inside the house. Alex was at work. Of course. Probably buried behind some spreadsheet, or in a meeting he didn't really need to be in. He hadn't called to check in. Not even a text to see if I was okay with the storm or the outage. Not that I expected him to anymore. It was just me and Ethan at home. He came down the stairs wearing a sweatshirt and sweatpants, hair a little messy, holding a flashlight in one hand and a blanket in the other. He looked so relaxed, comfortable. Too comfortable. Like this house, this life, belonged to him more than it did to me. He smiled when he saw me curled up on the couch. "Looks like we're stuck," he said. And for some reason, that sentence, so simple, so ordinary, sent a shiver down my spine. I nodded, gestured to the empty seat beside me. He sat. We shared the blanket. I told myself it was fine. It was cold. The house was drafty. There was nothing wrong with sharing warmth. We started talking, really talking. It began with old stories. Silly ones. Me recalling how I used to play outside for hours, pretending I was a warrior in the woods behind my childhood home. Him laughing, telling me how he once tried to build a go-kart out of garbage cans. We laughed more than I expected. And it felt good. The kind of laughter that loosens something tight inside you. But then the conversation slowed. Got quieter. More honest. I don't even remember how we got there, but he started talking about grief. About losing his dad. He said, "I thought it would hurt less by now, but it doesn't." Not really. His voice cracked a little, and my heart did, too. I reached out, touched his arm gently. It was supposed to be comforting, maternal even. But the way he looked at me in that moment, it wasn't how a younger brother looks at his sister. It was more. And I felt it. I saw it. His gaze lingered. Too long. And I knew that look. I remembered it. It had been years since anyone had looked at me that way. I shifted, pulling the blanket tighter around me, but he didn't move. He just stared, quietly. And then he said it. Soft. Measured. Like he knew exactly how dangerous the words were. "You deserve better, you know." I looked at him, eyes wide, breath caught in my throat. I wanted to ask what he meant. I wanted to tell him not to say things like that. But I couldn't find the words. Because deep down, I agreed with him. I laughed. Tried to shake it off, play it cool. But something in his eyes told me he meant every word. He wasn't just being sweet. He was saying something he'd wanted to say for a long time. And then, he touched my hand. So simple. Just his fingers resting lightly on mine. But it felt electric. I didn't pull away. Not immediately. Not even after my brain started screaming at me. Because in that moment, I wasn't thinking. I was feeling. And what I felt was wanted. And that was something I hadn't felt in a long, long time. What kind of woman even entertains a thought like that? What was wrong with me? Or, what had they done to me to make me crave attention so badly? That night, after he touched my hand, I stayed on the couch long after he went upstairs. I stared at the wall, barely blinking, the blanket still wrapped around me like it could protect me from what had just happened. It was just a touch. But it wasn't. It was the way his fingers hesitated on mine, the way he waited to see if I'd pull away. And when I didn't, something shifted. In him. In me. The guilt came first. Like a wave that hit before I could catch my breath. But right behind it was something darker. Something I didn't want to name. Desire. I felt sick with myself. I went to bed and lay next to Alex. He didn't move. Didn't roll over. Didn't ask how my day had been, or if I was okay during the storm. He just slept. Back turned to me like always. I stared at the ceiling with my hand on my chest, feeling the beat of my heart fast and uneven. Was it guilt? Or was it something else? I didn't know if I was terrified or thrilled, and that terrified me even more. The next day, I told myself to forget it, that it was just a moment. But I couldn't, because the moment didn't end that night. It followed me into the morning, into the silence at breakfast, into the way Ethan looked at me without saying a word. He wasn't acting like a kid with a crush. He was composed, steady, but I felt it. The tension, the pull. I started noticing everything. His cologne clean, crisp, with a hint of something warm I couldn't quite place. The way he leaned against the kitchen counter when he talked. The way his eyes lingered just a second too long when I walked into a room. And worse, the way I started noticing myself around him. How I fixed my hair before coming downstairs. How I changed out of my baggy t-shirts and into something that fit just a little better. How I looked for excuses to be in the same room as him. Every time I caught myself, the guilt would twist in my stomach like a knife. But the longing was louder. Because Ethan. He listened. He asked questions. He looked at me like I was someone worth seeing. And Alex? He barely looked at me at all. I'd try to initiate conversation. He'd give me one-word answers. I'd touch his arm at dinner. He'd flinch like I'd burned him. Sometimes I wondered if he still loved me, or if he just didn't know how to leave. Or maybe we were both just too tired to try anymore. I thought back to all the nights I cried quietly in the bathroom, afraid that my body had failed me because it couldn't give him a child. All the times I tried to hold it together just a little longer, hoping he'd come around. But he didn't. And somewhere along the way, I stopped expecting him to. So when Ethan filled that silence with kindness, with softness, I clung to it like a lifeline. Because it felt good to be wanted. Even if it was wrong. I tried to justify it. He's not really my brother, I told myself. We didn't grow up together. There's no blood. He's almost 18. He's not a kid. And most of all, he cares. That one thought echoed through me the loudest. Because at the end of the day, I wasn't just craving attention. I was starving for care. For presence. For someone to look at me and not see a burden or a failure or just a shadow of who I used to be. I started dreaming about him. Nothing overtly physical. Just soft moments, his hand brushing mine, his voice whispering my name, his arms around me as I fell asleep. And when I woke up, those dreams stayed with me longer than they should have. I knew I should create distance. But I didn't. I started timing my movements. Leaving the bathroom door cracked when I knew he'd pass by. Staying in the kitchen a little later than I needed to. Making coffee for two, even if he hadn't asked. It was subtle, but it was real. And each time our eyes met, there was something unspoken between us. A question neither of us wanted to ask out loud. But both of us were waiting to answer. Alex left on a Thursday. Business trip. 2 nights in Chicago. He barely looked up from his suitcase when he told me. Just tossed a few shirts in, grabbed his charger, kissed the air near my cheek, and said, "Don't wait up." I didn't. That night, the house was still. No shoes by the door. No voice in the hallway. No scent of his cologne lingering in the sheets. It should have felt peaceful. Instead, it felt like breathing in a hollow space, too wide, too quiet. Like I was alone in a house built to hold more than silence. Ethan was home. He knocked softly on my door around 9, just after the rain started tapping the windows. Said he needed some air. Asked if I wanted to take a walk. I hesitated. For a second. Then I grabbed a hoodie and followed him out. We didn't go far. Just down the block. Past the dim porch lights and the empty driveways. The kind of quiet that only comes in the deep hours when the world is asleep and confessions feel safer under streetlights. We talked. Really talked. About everything. About nothing. He told me he still had dreams where his dad came back. Said he always woke up crying and then hated himself for it. I told him I understood. That I sometimes woke up and didn't remember where I was for a second. Like I was still in a life that made sense. We talked about loneliness. Not the kind that comes from being alone, but the kind that settles in even when someone's sleeping right beside you. He looked at me then. Like he was memorizing every word on my face. And he said, "You deserve more than this." I wanted to tell him to stop. But I didn't. The wind picked up a little. My hair fell across my face. He reached out, slow, careful, and brushed it back behind my ear. I should have stepped away. I didn't. His hand lingered. Just for a moment. Our eyes locked. Held. He leaned in. Barely. Not enough to touch. Just enough to make my breath catch. And I turned. I walked away. But I looked back. And he was still standing there. Still watching me. Still wanting me. The next few days blurred together, but something had shifted. Everything felt heavier. Even the air between us had weight. One afternoon, I came home early from the grocery store. He was just stepping out of the bathroom, towel slung low around his waist, chest damp and glistening. I froze. He did too. But neither of us looked away. We just stood there. So much said without a single word. After that, he started doing more around the house. Little things. Folding the laundry before I got to it. Washing dishes he didn't use. Lighting candles in the kitchen before dinner, like ambience was something we suddenly needed. And then came the notes. Small, folded squares of paper left in quiet places. On the counter, smile more. You're beautiful. Tucked in my book, you look peaceful when you read. I like that. Inside the fridge, stuck to the milk, I hope today is kind to you. Each note was simple, but they cut deeper than anything Alex had said in months. Because they noticed me. They saw me. One night, I found a note on the bathroom mirror. It read, "You deserve to be adored." And I stared at it so long, my reflection started to blur. I kept telling myself I could stop it. That I was still in control. That nothing had really happened. But the truth was, it already had. The shift. The ache. The quiet unraveling of the line I swore I'd never cross. And then, one night, late, after I'd already turned off the light, there was a knock on my bedroom door. Soft. Hesitant. I opened it, and there he was. Ethan. Barefoot. Eyes wide, like he'd been holding something in for too long. He looked at me and said, "I have a request." And that moment, that one moment, changed everything. I opened the door in a robe. Hair loose. Skin warm from the shower. I hadn't expected to see him there, not like that. Barefoot, hoodie sleeves pulled over his hands, eyes wide like he was holding something fragile and didn't know where to put it. He didn't speak at first. Just looked at me, almost afraid. Then, softly, like he didn't want to break the silence between us, he said, "Can I stay here tonight?" I had a nightmare. My heart jumped. I stared at him, one hand gripping the edge of my robe. I should have said no. I should have told him to go back to bed, that it wasn't appropriate, that we were crossing into a place we couldn't return from. But I didn't. I stepped aside. He walked in. I closed the door. He didn't go for the bed. He sat on the edge, hands clasped in his lap, like he was still waiting for permission just to exist in the same space with me. And God, I sat beside him. Neither of us said anything for a long time. The room felt heavy with unspoken things. The kind of silence that hums in your bones. My heart was pounding so loud I was sure he could hear it. Eventually, we lay down. Not close. Not touching. Just two bodies on the same bed, breathing into the darkness. I stared at the ceiling, trying to pretend this was normal. That it was innocent. But nothing about it was. I could feel the heat coming off his skin. I could hear the sharp inhale he took every time I shifted slightly beside him. The air was thick with everything we hadn't said. And then, under the covers. Slowly, cautiously, his hand found mine. Just our fingers brushing. And my breath caught. Because something about that tiny contact felt more intimate than anything I'd felt in years. He didn't move further. Didn't push. Just stayed there, his pinky looping around mine like he was trying to say I'm here without speaking. And I didn't pull away. I couldn't. My body, my heart, my mind, they weren't speaking the same language anymore. I turned toward him. He turned too. Our eyes met in the dark. Barely lit by the soft glow of the hallway light sneaking through the crack in the door. And then, so gently, it happened. He kissed me. Soft. Careful. Like he didn't want to break me. I didn't move. Not away. Not closer. Just let it happen. His hand brushed my cheek, my neck, my shoulder. And my robe slipped. Not all the way. Just enough. Enough to say, I see you. Enough to say, I want you. He kissed me again. Slower. Deeper. Then desperate. Like years of loneliness were pouring out of him, and me. At the same time, I heard a soft sound escape my lips. Felt my hands tangle into his shirt. Felt his breath on my collarbone. We didn't speak. We didn't need to. There was only movement. Touch. Heat. It was slow at first. Then faster. Then like we were both afraid the world would end before we could finish whatever this was. And it wasn't careful anymore. It was messy. Hungry. Terrifying. We crossed the line. Fully. Completely. There was no space left between us. No silence. Only skin. And breath. And everything we'd been holding and finally spilling out into the dark. After, I lay there with his arms around me. Chest rising and falling in time with mine. I didn't speak. But in my head, all I could hear was one truth I didn't want to face. I shouldn't. My lips moved before I could stop them. I shouldn't, but I want to. And I did. God help me, I wanted to. I'd never felt more alive. Not in years. Not since before the heartbreak, the needles, the silence, the distance. In that moment, I felt seen. Desired. Whole. And that scared me more than anything. Because I knew the cost. I knew what I had just shattered. But I also knew something else. I wasn't ready to let go. The morning after was silent. Not peaceful. Not gentle. Just silent. The kind that presses into your chest like a weight you can't move. The kind where every little sound feels like an alarm. I woke up before him. His arm was draped over my waist, breath warm against my neck. For a second, just a second, I let myself pretend we were anywhere else. Anyone else. Then reality came flooding back. And with it, shame. Fear. A tight, sick feeling in my stomach that only grew stronger with every heartbeat. I slid out from under the sheets carefully, like I was trying not to wake something dangerous. Put on a robe. Avoided the mirror. I didn't look back. Downstairs, I made coffee with trembling hands. Burned the toast. Couldn't eat. I kept waiting to hear his footsteps. But he didn't come down. When he finally did, hours later, he didn't look at me. Didn't say good morning. Didn't smile. He poured a glass of water, drank it in silence, and went back upstairs. My chest tightened. Had I imagined it? Was it nothing to him? Had it meant too much to me? That night, Alex came home. He hugged me at the door, distracted as always, phone in hand, talking about flight delays and bad coffee. I smiled, nodded, pretended. Pretended I wasn't carrying a secret so heavy it made my knees weak. Pretended I wasn't terrified he could see it in my eyes. At dinner, Ethan barely touched his food. He didn't speak unless spoken to. Didn't look up. Didn't meet my eyes once. The tension was unbearable. I kept glancing between the two of them, my husband and the boy I had crossed the line with, and I felt like I was suffocating. I started imagining things. Was Alex suspicious? Did he notice the silence? The shift? Or worse, was Ethan going to tell him? Later that evening, I walked past Ethan's room and heard his voice. He was on the phone. Low. Hushed. Urgent. And then I heard it, no, nothing happened. I swear. The words hit me like a slap. I froze. Stood there in the hallway, heartbeat thudding in my ears. Was he talking about me? Was he denying it? Lying about it? Protecting me, or regretting everything? I backed away before I could hear more. I didn't want confirmation. I didn't want to know who was on the other end of that call. I just wanted to disappear. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed beside Alex, who drifted off within minutes like nothing had changed. I stared at the ceiling, trying to remember how I got here. Trying to understand how one night could feel so real and so fragile all at once. And then I saw it. A piece of paper, folded neatly on my pillow, just beneath the edge. I picked it up with trembling hands. 3 words, written in small, careful handwriting, we need to talk. And just like that, my heart stopped. I sat alone in the kitchen the next morning. The house was quiet, but my head wasn't. The note, "We need to talk," was folded beside my coffee cup like it was mocking me. But I hadn't gone to him. I couldn't. Because I didn't know what to say, and I didn't know what I wanted to hear. I pulled out an old journal from the drawer, one I hadn't touched in years. Flipped through pages filled with hope, dreams, lists of baby names, little drawings of cribs and tiny socks, and ideas for nursery colors. So much hope once lived there. So much me. Now I barely recognized the handwriting. One entry caught me off guard. Alex said he wants to be a dad by next Christmas. He kissed my stomach like it was already real. I stared at that line for so long, the letters started to blur. Was that real? Did that even happen? Or was it just a version of him I invented to keep myself from falling apart? I looked down at my hands. They felt like someone else's. Like I'd borrowed them for a day and forgot to give them back. What I felt with Ethan. Was it real? Or just desperation wrapped in the illusion of comfort? Was I drawn to him because of him? Or because I was starving for something, anything, that reminded me I was still human? Still desirable? Still here? I thought about Ethan's face that morning after. The way he couldn't meet my eyes. I wondered if I ruined something in him. If I'd taken his softness, his kindness, and crushed it under the weight of my own loneliness. Or maybe he was never as innocent as I thought. Maybe he knew exactly what he was doing. And I let him. I walked past the hallway mirror and stopped. My reflection stared back, but it felt distant, hollow. Eyes too tired. Lips too quiet. I reached up, touched my cheek like I was trying to feel something real. Did I betray my husband? I whispered. Or, did he abandon me long ago? Because I don't know when he stopped loving me. I only know that I noticed when someone else started to. I thought about telling Alex. Coming clean. Just laying it all out. Owning it. Letting the truth burn through whatever was left between us. But then I saw it, the look he gave me at dinner that night. The way he talked about work like I wasn't even there. The emptiness in his voice when he said, "You okay?" Out of obligation, not care. What would confession fix? Would it punish him for leaving me behind long before Ethan ever touched me? Or would it just destroy the only structure I had left holding me together? I considered packing a bag, running, starting over somewhere new, where no one knew my name or my history or the quiet shame I carried in my chest like a second heartbeat. But where would I go? And even if I got there, I'd still be me. A few days passed. I avoided Ethan. He avoided me. The air between us had changed. No more notes. No more lingering glances. Just silence again. But this time, it hurt worse. Then one evening, he found me folding laundry in the living room. He stood in the doorway, backpack over his shoulder, and said, "I think I'm gonna move out. I need to focus on school. I think it's better." I just nodded. Didn't argue. Didn't ask him to stay. Because maybe he was right. Maybe we were just a moment. A moment that shouldn't have happened. But did. A spark in the middle of darkness. Warm for a second. Blinding for a moment. Then gone. Just gone. Have you ever felt so invisible that even the wrong attention felt like salvation? Have you ever looked in the mirror and not recognized the person staring back at you? Because somewhere along the way, you stopped being seen by the people who were supposed to love you? Do you believe that loneliness can justify terrible decisions? Because I don't know if I do. I'm still trying to make sense of it all. Still trying to figure out if what happened was a mistake. Or just a symptom of something broken inside me. Or maybe something that was broken long before Ethan ever came into the picture. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't even know if I deserve it. But I am asking for honesty, for understanding, for connection. So tell me in the comments. Not to judge, but to understand. Have you ever crossed a line you swore you never would, just because someone finally made you feel alive again? Because I need to know I'm not alone. And if this story made you feel something, anything, please like this video and subscribe to Shocking Infidelity Saga. Every week, we share stories that unravel the deepest parts of the heart. The parts we don't say out loud. The parts we're scared of. The parts that make us human. Some lines, once crossed, they don't lead to freedom. They just lead to different kinds of chains. Chains of guilt. Of memory. Of what-ifs that echo every time the house goes quiet. I wish I could say I learned a lesson. That I came out stronger. Wiser. Redeemed. But the truth? Sometimes the lesson is simpler. Harder. Colder. Be careful where you seek warmth. Because not all fires comfort. Some burn slow. Some burn clean. And some leave scars that never really fade.